Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, folks, welcome back to the summer series of the Property Couch podcast and a very special Christmas Eve. Welcome to you too, Ben.
Merry Christmas, Bryce.
Well, Merry Christmas for tomorrow. Anyway, how's the lead up? If you got the what do you call it, what do you call it that goes on the mantelpiece? Why have I gone brain dead?
Oh, the
Christmas
sacks. Oh, the Christmas sacks.
Got them ready to go?
Got the Christmas sacks on the mantelpiece. We've got the lighting up. It's all good to go. Celebrate in style and, with what has been an interesting year. Tumultuous would be, yes, good one. So, yes, no, all good. Now, we're ready for Christmas.
Last night for Elfie on the shelf too.
Elf on the shelf is done, Leo. Our little Leo elf on the shelf. He's been around a few years.
Yeah,
he's back for hopefully his final visit. Who knows? But we'll see how we go.
never does surprise me how creative Elfie can get on where they can turn up every morning.
Incredible stuff. Incredible stuff on social media there.
Hey, it's been fun. We've had a number of summer series to date with some amazing money transformations, and today is no different, Ben. We are going to talk to someone who started, using their own words, late. They feel like they started late, and whether or not this will work for them. And also, when we chat with Dennis, you're going to see someone who the accumulation is done and dusted. The queue is in the rack, Ben. No more properties need to be purchased. It is done.
Absolutely. I mean, it's great to have watched his journey over the years in terms of what him and Glenda have been able to do. And it's the first time we've shared that on the podcast. So it's a good news story right on the cusp of Christmas.
It is a ripper, folks. So why don't we enjoy this? If you're last minute on your way in the car, getting your Christmas presents, or just going for a walk, relaxing, ready for the big day tomorrow, strap in, get excited. This is a great money transformation story. Let's cut to the interview we had with Dennis Amadeo. Hey, all right, today, Ben, we've got a very special guest on our summer series. We are talking with Dennis Amadeo. First of all, welcome to the Property Couch, Dennis.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. Very privileged, I think, to be on the couch.
Oh, well, we're excited to have a conversation with you today. You've been someone who's listened to us for a long, long time, and we've had a lot of interaction with you. So we know a little bit about your story, but we're keen for our community to hear a bit about your story. So let's kick that off, Dennis. Tell us what it was like growing up in your household around money. Did you have discussions with the parents? Was it a taboo topic? Was it something you talked about? Let us know what it was like when you were growing up.
So I guess typical with most parents, it wasn't discussed at all. Money wasn't discussed at the table, family table, dinner table, or anything like that. My parents were both immigrants coming from Italy in the early 70s. So I guess I'm the first generation Australian in our family, so to speak. They worked very hard, bought a house, came here with nothing. My mum worked in manufacturing. My dad was a labourer, built a house out in the western suburbs on a good block of land.
Western suburbs of Sydney. That's
correct. Sorry, yes, the western suburbs of Sydney.
All good. Just to put some context there, yeah. And obviously not speaking the language, right? When they,
yes.
So hence, it's a very, very big decision that they've made to come out and make good in Australia. So, they, as you said, worked hard to basically, start from scratch.
Exactly right. Obviously, they moved here, for a better life and for a better life for their future child, which is wasn't born yet when they came here, but I think they were pregnant with my older sister. My mum was pregnant with my older sister when they were on the boat on the way here to Australia.
Oh, okay.
So they came here to give us a better life, and they have definitely done that. Even though money wasn't spoken about, I think through their actions in terms of hard work, they were fairly conservative spenders. So, I learned, I guess, those values in money because myself, I was a fairly conservative spender as well.
So tell us a little bit about what you saw then. You talked about conservative spending. What were the observations? It wasn't talked about, but was there any rituals? Was there any things they did with money? Was there yellow packets of paper they'd move the money around on the table at a different time of the week? What were your observations?
It really wasn't, I didn't see it, but I didn't feel that we were short of money, and I didn't feel that we were abundant of money either. I went to a good school, always had, uniform and lunch, and, if I needed something, as a child growing up, I guess I always had it, the shoes, toys or whatever it was. So, so it wasn't that we felt frugal or abundant. It was just, they just got on with it, I guess.
So what did that look like through teenage years then? When you started to get pocket money and you started to get your own sort of cash flow, what sort of modelling were you doing in terms of how you manage your money? Was it because it wasn't talked about, it just came in and came out, or were you a saver? Talk us through the teenage years, early 20s.
Yeah, so I guess once I started to earn my own income, I was a saver. Didn't really overspend or go out partying or things like that. The one thing I did do when I started earning some good money in my early 20s, I went and got myself a car. I guess one of the bad things, though, I got a loan for the car. So I learned, in the future years that wasn't the brightest idea. Getting a loan for a depreciating asset wasn't great.
Well,
but back then you don't realise that.
Don't worry. Now that's why we're doing this podcast, so people will make better considered decisions in terms of whether they need a reliable car or whether they need a fancy car. Hey, when you did start earning that money, did you remember any consideration that you made in terms of which bank you chose and which bank account? Or because a lot of people their parents bank with Bank X, so they open up the account balance with Bank X. Was there any thought process, or did you study, higher interest savings versus, general check accounts?
So in the beginning, it was just with the bank that I had, I'm not sure if I can mention the bank, was the Dolomite account. So I had one of those.
CBA, that's fine.
CBA, yeah, that was my bank account. And then I guess I started to think of, okay, well, now that I have this money, can it work harder for me? I was already thinking about that back in the early days, but I didn't know exactly what vehicle that was. So, I went with the INGs back in the days, term deposits for 6 months, ING high interest saving accounts. I'm not sure they exist these days.
Yeah, they do. No, they do. Yeah.
So I did start thinking about that. I signed myself up to a newsletter, which was all about shares, trying to educate myself a little bit about that, although I didn't really take any action then, apart from I did create a share account. I can't remember what they're called, but I didn't buy a single share. So I had a bit of knowledge, but I didn't quite know the next step, and I wasn't confident as well to act on any of that little knowledge that I did have.
So what was the desire? So through your 20s, did you want to accumulate assets, pay off your own home? What was the spark? What was the thing that was driving you back in your early stage of working life?
It was really more just to try and build on the income that I have sitting in the bank. What can I do? But I wasn't thinking retirement or houses back then or anything like that. I didn't. No one in our family or in our inner circle had any sort of investment shares or investment properties. So I didn't even, to be honest, I was pretty naive. Didn't really know that was a thing.
Because how long did it take for your parents to get the first home from when they arrived? I mean, that was the focus. They were, they came here with nothing. They worked hard, and they bought that home. What was that time frame, and was that sort of pretty quick for you? Once you got the car, was it like, okay, next is the house, or was it more or less, no, enjoy life, meet my life partner, those types of things?
Yeah, so for my parents, I think, I don't know the exact time frame, but when they first arrived in Australia, they stayed with some friends for a couple of years. And then they, as I said, bought the house, which was, it was a fibro house at the time.
Yep.
And then my dad just built it up to be, I guess, a typical Italian house, brick, concrete, veggie patch in the backyard, all that kind of stuff.
It wasn't just a veggie patch. Come on, there was
a market garden.
There was a vineyard. There was, you were drying meats. There
was everything. It was wonderful. Yeah, it was great. But for myself, again, being the typical, I guess I am a typical Italian boy with Italian mum. When I was earning the income, I just stayed at home until I met my now wife. Didn't move out of home until we got married. There still wasn't any thought back then of trying to build up enough money to buy a house then.
So what was the old style of money management then? So you're working, trying to put money in the bank account, and how were you managing? Was there any budgeting or any sort of system involved, or was it just survive from paycheck to paycheck?
Yeah, there wasn't budgeting. It was because I was an okay saver. I wasn't really surviving paycheck to paycheck. Some of my work colleagues were back then, where they would say, "Oh, you know, if pay was a day late, they were in big trouble." I was never in that situation. At the time then as well, I did understand a little bit about the concept of a credit card. I had a credit card, but everything in and out was on the credit card, but I never ever I always paid it off on time. But everything, food, everything was coming in and out of the credit card, and there was no auto sweep, or I didn't even know that existed. So that was paid off manually, but I made sure that I never paid interest on a credit card.
One of the things that's really interesting, in my observations of the countless number of people that we've interviewed and the work that we do, there's sort of the conscious spender and the unconscious spender. You sound to me like you're a conscious spender. In other words, you're living at home. You didn't have to worry about money because there was money in the bank. But any time that you did do a discretionary spend, was there an engagement with yourself around want versus need, or was it no? I had enough money, so I just, you know, there was not much engagement in terms of how this impacted the savings, or was there? I mean, that to me is the essence of the conscious versus unconscious mind around spending.
I guess I was in the conscious spending, but not so much of a want versus need. I was more, if I had the money to buy something, for like thinking back in my early days, like the latest PlayStation that was out, I made sure though that I checked 4 or 5 different stores for the correct, which was the cheapest price. I didn't just go and buy the first price that I saw. So it's the same with, like, you know, bicycles, or even with that car that I bought. It's there was a lot of shopping around before I pulled the trigger on it, but it wasn't, oh, this is a want or a need, so to speak, back then.
Awesome. So there is some hygiene and awareness of money management, and that's important. I think that's a nice takeaway for our community to understand that, you know, that in your mind, that's basically where you sat.
Yeah.
The next conversation, because what's interesting about your story and today, and what we're trying to talk to, is about, you know, sort of mid-40s people. It's never too late to obviously get to the outcome that we want to get to. So we'll talk more about that later in the episode. But when did you meet Glenda? When did your life partner come along, and was her money alignment consistent with your money habits?
Yeah, so we met at university in the mid-90s. So she was an outrageous spender as well. So we were money aligned, I guess, just through luck.
No, that's good.
Which was a good thing.
That's helpful.
It's definitely helpful, 100%. So it seemed like, I was the more outrageous spender than she was.
Yeah, you were a conscious spender. So
correct.
Okay.
And then once we got married, we merged our bank accounts immediately after that. And
so Dennis, what was the what were you hoping to do? Was there a point where you pivoted? And because I know that you're a money smarts user, but it sounds like, you know, too conservative spenders, work hard, put money in the bank, didn't get yourself into any credit card debts or anything like that. So it sounds like things were going along okay. Was there something that a thought or a person or something that came along that thought, hey, I really want to take further charge of my financial future? Because it seemed to be going along okay at that point, right?
Correct. Yeah, things were going along okay. I guess at some point I stumbled upon the TPC podcast and the book almost at the same time. And that was when I kind of, my eyes started opening up about, hey, you need to start thinking about your future here, and your retirement. And that's when.
How old were you roughly at this point when you?
Yeah, late 30s.
Yep.
Almost 40.
Yep.
So it's a very late realization. But I'm glad that we did realize that better late than never.
But Dennis, when you got married, you obviously, you know, the focus is on getting the family home. So you didn't have a home that you owned prior to that. So you know, you're following the standard formula in terms of, you know, get a house, set up the family, and those types of things. And obviously, you know, there's children, or Luca, I think is your son. In terms of in terms of that, when you combined your finances, did you have a money management system at all? Was there any sort of rule of thumb? Who looked after the household finances? Was it jointly done? Did one member, was it you or Glenda that took charge of paying the bills? How did that work?
Yeah, there wasn't a money management system. As I said, we joined our bank accounts, but pretty much all the bills so once we bought the family home, which was purchased in 2004, I was just taking care of all the money side of things, the bills. We had a joint credit card as well then. Again, all our spending, our day-to-day spending, everything was coming out of the credit card, and that was just paid off. Again, we made sure we paid it off every month. But there wasn't any budget or money management system, there was no real thought back then when we first purchased the home about, what do we do when we're 60?
Mm-hmm. What about the system? Like, did you give any thought to offset accounts or lending, or was it cheapest rate, basic, no frills type products? Was there any sort of investigation there, or did you go directly to a bank? Did you use a broker?
So, so when we purchased our family home in 2004, it was we bought it on 100% home loan, which you could do back then.
Yeah.
And something called LMI. I didn't know what that was back then, but that was thrown in as well into the loan.
Yeah. So it was 105% of the value of the home. Yep. 105%. They don't exist anymore. No.
They don't exist.
Thank you, GFC.
I mean, I remember back then in 2004, I thought, wow, this is expensive. Are we really going to do this? Fast forward now. But so in terms of loans, it was give me the cheapest rate. That's all I wanted to know. So during the course of up until recently, I was refinancing that every 4 odd years, whenever I thought the interest rates were getting a bit out of hand. Yep. But again, I was doing that myself, and I was just looking for cheapest rate. That's all I was going for. Something that I've learned now is that the rate isn't everything.
Well, it's important, but it's not everything.
It's
strategy and structure.
Yeah, exactly.
So okay, so you stumbled across the podcast, and what was it? What was the message that landed for you that you thought, well, I need to sort of keep an eye on, because you said you weren't thinking of retirement. What changed that, and what was the penny drop moment for you?
It was once I got Glenda to read the book and start listening to the podcast as well, that then we're both on the same page. Then we just started talking about, okay, well, the penny started dropping then, and it was like, okay, we really do need to act. We need to do something. What can we do? What options do we have? And it was then where we realized that even though we're learning knowledge through the book and podcasts and other podcasts that I was listening to, we kind of realized that we needed assistance in order to kind of achieve what we wanted to do. And that's when I guess we started to learn the value of professionals and getting professional help.
Was there any mindset that you needed to overcome? My sister married an Italian, so I'm familiar with the Italian culture, and pay cash for everything, don't go into debt. Was there anything that that the two of you needed to overcome to be able to? Because it's one thing to say, yep, we're gonna set up our financial future, but then when you throw leverage into the mix, that can keep us a bit wobbly at the knees at times.
Mindset was massive, especially for me. I think what I get more out of the podcast is the mindset, the values of the mindset. So in terms of, roll back 4 years ago, I wouldn't have never paid for a professional, never would have paid to have an offset account, never would have. They were things that you just don't do. Like, why would you do that? And understanding the value of your money going towards being able to leverage someone who has experience in the game.
So, I mean, here's someone who's conservative with their money, who's got a wife who's even more conscious and conservative with their money. You're contemplating 105% loan to value ratio, paying an LMI premium to get your first home after you get married in 2004, and you push the button. Which obviously proves to be a very, very sensible decision, right? I mean, it was probably coming into, at the time in Sydney, the higher end of the market. So were you watching the property market move and thought, we've got to get in? Or was that the sort of trigger, or was it just, no, we're playing the long game here, and now whatever you paid for that property, I'm sure it's worth double, if not more. Tell us a little bit about that story.
Yeah, so we were watching the market boom, and there was some properties. So we live in a townhouse complex. A couple sold, like maybe back in 2014, 15, and I couldn't believe the price it went for. And then we're like, okay, well, we've got to get in the game. So then before we had engaged anyone, my wife and I just started going to some open houses, obviously around our area, as you do, because that's all we know. That's all we know, you know. Parramatta's a great place to live, you know. Let's look around here, and oh yeah, and the prices were astronomical, and we think, oh, how can we do this? But then again, even though we're kind of looking to buy maybe a first investment property, there wasn't an end game then. There wasn't a why are we doing it? It was just, you know, because we got to get it. There was maybe a bit of FOMO there.
Yep.
We definitely got to get in, and thankfully then at that same time was when the podcast of the book came around, and there was a property expo as well that I attended that both of you happened to present there.
So coming back to, yes, you got FOMO, it's 2004, and as we said, the market ran from pretty much 2001 to the end of 2004. And then in Sydney, property prices stagnated, right? So here you are with a high loan to value ratio. You've got a property that, you know, values in Sydney probably didn't start to really re-shine until probably 2008, 2009. Now I'm generalising here, but was there any moment in there where you thought, oh, you know, actually the property was worth less than what we paid for it? Did you have any worries or concerns at that time?
No, I didn't really track the property market then at all. Yeah, there was no inkling about that, or I guess the short answer.
We're in on shelter for you.
Yeah, it was for us. Yep. And then, you know, 2011 was when our son Luca was born, and then that's maybe as well the trigger where you start thinking, okay, well, there's 3 of us now.
Yeah.
And maybe thinking back to my parents, where they wanted to have a better life, not for themselves, but for their children. Once you have your own child, then you think, okay, well, you know, what can we do to give him a better life?
Yeah.
Not that our life is terrible, but
yeah,
you always want to better yourself, you know, as a person in your work environment, you want to do better. You know, if you don't do better, then you just kind of stagnated, don't you? So that was as well part of the goal to go on the investment property journey, is to as well give my son Luca a better life as well.
Awesome.
And so let's talk about Money Smarts, because we know that you've implemented that. What was it about the Money Smarts that you thought would help you sort of get more financial peace and be able to better organise your money?
So I guess we implemented Money Smarts when it was a PDF in PDF format.
You've been with us for a while.
the old 10-page fact sheet. Yeah.
Yes.
That's right. I remember just reading that and trying to comprehend it and try and understand it correctly. But then it was drawn visually on paper for me by the mortgage broker we engaged. Yeah. And that was kind of like, when I saw it drawn up, I was like, oh, okay, that's how it works. And then when we implemented it, so when we got our new mortgages sorted out for the first investment property, and Money Smarts was kind of built into that, the change was incredible.
Yeah, tell us about that. So pre Money Smarts and post. So the change was incredible. What does that actually mean? And I'm certainly not looking. I'm not fishing for anything other than how it's helped you, so that someone's listening to this can see how it might help them.
So pre Money Smarts, there was no system in place. We did have a credit card that we paid off every month, but that was manual. But everything, all the expenses anything that we spent on was spent on the credit card. We still lived conservative pre Money Smarts, but I didn't know how much surplus we were capturing. We were capturing some because I always saw the bank balance go up a little bit. I didn't know how much it was, and there was no purpose for the surplus money. It just sat there like it didn't do anything. There was no reason. It wasn't working for us.
Yeah. So obviously you sit down with a broker and they explain the benefit of an offset account and having that liquidity there. You know, so when you had that initial meeting, what was the response from both of you about, oh, actually this could really work, you know, quite well for us?
Yeah, it was the explanation of offsets and being able to park your money in there, and it was a massive light bulb moment, 100%. And then, you know, when we implemented Money Smarts, you know, now we can see where every dollar's going, especially now that you've got the online version. It's brilliant. I know how much surplus I'm capturing every month, every year as well. And the fact of, I really like the provisioning side of things as well, that we can provision for things. Yeah, it's great.
And so in talking about that, now that it is online and there's, you know, the instruction manual is the book, right? What are you at that sort of 10 minutes a month mark, or do you do a little bit more with it, or is it sort of on autopilot, self-driving?
Well, I'm a bit of a tinker, so I mean, it really takes less than 10 minutes, but I'm on there quite a lot, to be honest. Also, coming from, I work in IT, so I do like the aspect of the portal and how the dashboards are built and all that kind of thing. But what I do, I tend to, as soon as I pay a bill on a credit card, instead of waiting for the end of the month, I'll go in that day and put it in the provision, if it was a provision, for example.
Okay. Yep. So in other words, you're just checking in more regularly than the once a month where, you're meant to get the credit card statement and do all that in one go.
Correct.
You're just getting into a routine and a habit, which feels right for you. But fundamentally, you're doing brilliantly, because at the end of the month, most of your work's done from the check-ins that you're doing when you're making those adjustments.
Correct. But it really is under 10 minutes a month to, if that's all I was supposed to do. That's all it takes.
Hey Dennis, have you made a mental shift around when you get paid? Because if you don't have money smarts, you get paid as soon as the company or whoever you work for puts the money into your bank account. But under the money smart system, we reshift when you get paid to being when your 7-day float gets paid to you out of your offset account. Have you made sort of any transitions around that so that as Ben said, conscious and unconscious? You don't have unconscious spending, but you also know that all of the other money's been allocated already. Tell us about that, and tell us about how you use the 7-day float.
Yeah, there's definitely no unconscious spending anymore. The living and lifestyle, the 7-day float is, I can't speak more highly of it since we've implemented it in our lives. You just don't need to think about the week. You have your float that we assign ourselves. So we chose the Thursday as well, going off your recommendation, and that works for us. Yeah. We've had to tweak the float a little bit. So in the beginning, it was maybe set too low. And then we set it too high, and now we've hit a perfect number now. And the one thing though, now that COVID's kind of come, we're finding that we have a bit more money to play with in the living and lifestyle now, because we're just not spending as much. Seeing that Glenda's 100% working from home, so she doesn't spend as much on transport or eating out.
And in terms of obviously, the 7-day float is traditionally the debit card. And you've both got signatures on your two cards. How does that manage? I mean, in terms of how do you communicate to each other around who's spending what? Because as I said, the risk sometimes is that, in my case, Jane's down at the grocery store, and I've put some money on there that I may not have meant to or shouldn't have, and then all of a sudden, she's looking at, okay, that there's not enough money in that account. How did you just solve that problem in terms of communication around your 7-day float?
Well, as we both have the shared account, two debit cards, obviously, you can check on the app, I guess. Yeah. There was a time in the beginning, where we would have overspent on the living and lifestyle. So what we did for the week later, we just gave ourselves less. Yep, adjusted for it. Yep. I remember there was a time where we overspent quite a lot. So instead of adjusting the whole amount for that week, we kind of just did a small amount over 6 weeks, for example, to kind of bring ourselves back into check. Awesome. A tip maybe that I can give people is, so what we did for our living and lifestyle float as well is we cut it back by $20 a week, and that's going to be our Christmas money now. Nice. Yeah. So you just put that challenge out to yourselves to see whether you could find $20 in discretionary spending inside your discretionary spending account. Correct. So that is a great tip for the community to understand that even in your 7-day float account, there is effectively essential spending and there's discretionary mixed in with that. And you've just given yourself the challenge to give yourself a nice little kicker at Christmas. So the next question is obviously, how's that gone, and when do you get to spend that? Because we're right on Christmas. It's actually not, generally it's not for us. So we spend it, it's for my son or my sister or my mum or. Oh, nice. Yeah, but it's good that we did that. So we found ourselves, not being too short on living and lifestyle. So on the 7-day float.
Dennis, the number one stressor in relationships is generally money. And you've now got a system that you and Glenda, coming from a conservative base, and now you've got a system, it sounds like you're both working together to make it work. What sort of a difference has that made on your relationship compared to others who often do have a lot of stress around money?
Yeah, we never have any arguments over money or where the money's going or who's spending what. So that's great. No tension there at all. Especially, I guess, during COVID, my work was affected, or my income was affected quite a lot. But we really weren't that worried because we had the visibility in the Money Smarts, and then you introduced Money Stretch a bit during COVID, and we could kind of play with the numbers there. But while there was concern, there wasn't stress or panic because we knew we had our bases covered.
And does Glenda like to also go into the My Wealth portal and check up on where things are at as well?
Unfortunately, she doesn't. It's mainly just me.
That's all right. That's all right.
Yeah. So I'm the driver there. As long as she has the living lifestyle there every week, it's ready to go, and as long as there's the holiday provision money there.
So let me ask you another way. When does she check up on you? Is that sort of once a quarter, half a year, or no, we're on track, or because you're reporting back to her, honey, we're on track, everything's good, that she doesn't even have to check in?
So it's more when she's like, okay, because she loves to travel and loves to take us on holidays, which is fantastic. So whenever she's ready to book that next holiday, I'm like, okay, let me check in Money Smarts. Do we have the funds
provision
there?
Yeah.
Is it a provision? Because we have a provision there for it. I'm like, yeah, let's go for it. She's good to go.
Well, thank God you're managing it really well, because imagine Ben and my name would be mud if it wasn't working. She's going to book the holiday, and you're saying the Money Smart system won't allow us to do that, which is really, really cool. So you've got this sound foundation of money management, which is great. So then you decide that you're going to invest in property. Talk us through that decision, and was that easy? And how's it going for you?
So in the beginning, it definitely wasn't easy. So once we made the decision that we were going to invest in property, we then both made the decision going to use professionals as well. We don't think we can do it ourselves. And then we engaged a professional to, I guess, draw up a quick plan for us. It was a free consult at the time. And then I got cold feet. I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't think we can do this. I have to spend this money. And I sat on it for 4 or 5 months. And then it was my wife then pushing, saying, we're going to do, are we going to do this? And then I pulled the trigger, and we haven't looked. I cannot, I wish we did it earlier. I guess a lot of people say that once they're in, we wish we started much, much earlier. But the biggest question that we always had was, okay, we're in our 40s now. Can we do it in our 40s? We're mum and dad, middle incomes, I guess, in our 40s. Is it too late?
And what did you find out?
I know that, it's not too late. It's definitely not too late to act. As long as you're willing to act and you're in the right mindset, definitely go ahead and do it. So we then, once we had the full plan done, which took, again, it was a long process, which was good, 4 or 5 months to get that completed. I was questioning the plan. It said we're going to buy 3 properties and they're going to be this amount of money. I'm like, this isn't possible. We can't do this. What bank's going to lend us this money? And how can you buy a property for X amount of dollars? And that's not true. And so I was still a little bit skeptical there, even though all the numbers were presented to me and they were there in front of me, plain sight to see. It was still hard to get your head around.
Cold feet. So
cold feet,
talk us through the cold feet. What was running through your mind for you to get a little nudge from Glenda? And I'm from the perspective of someone who's listening to this who may also relate to having cold feet.
So a lot of it was, for me, I just start thinking, okay, well, what if we buy it and it's a dud and it doesn't work and we're going to spend all this money? And I just started thinking all the negative things. And that's where I mentioned before that the mindset is a big deal. It's just a mindset shift that I guess I needed from Glenda, that little push. And then once I had that mindset shift, you just don't look backwards.
So mindset, but what's giving you that confidence in the mindset? Is it the self-belief, or is it a combination of the self-belief plus the cash in the bank? That's the buffer that that as you say, through Money Stretch, you can work out how long that money's going to last you for. And obviously, if you've got a plan, there's a real clear understanding of how much your money will last you in the event of tenants not paying and all these types of things.
Yeah.
What was it around those sort of things that you now see? Obviously, you can open up your bank account now, and there's a fair bit of debt there, right? But how do you know that you're sleeping at night with all that debt?
Well, in the beginning, I guess to pull the trigger, it was a little bit of the self-belief, but also seeing the plan and exactly where things were outlined. you're going to buy the property in this month, and the next month going to be this month, and this year, and that the fact that as well we had all the big rocks in the jar inside the plan as well. For example, 50th wedding, when Luca gets married, when he goes to school. So with all that set in stone and planned out, there was confidence there that, okay, we can do this. Let's shoot for it. Let's give it a crack and see how it goes. There was more as well in the very beginning is, all right, let's have a crack at it. If it doesn't work, at least we can say we tried.
Well, Glenda gave you the nudge, and you've obviously described your thought process. What was hers? Did she find it easier or harder than you to go, well, okay, we've got a plan now, we've got to pull the trigger?
Yeah, no, she found it fairly easy once the plan was drawn up.
Mm-hmm.
She was ready to go.
So you pulled the trigger on 1 or 2 properties now, Dennis?
3.
3?
Yeah. We have,
okay.
Plus the family home, I guess we have 4, so to speak.
Yeah, okay. That's great. And how are they going? And so tell us a little bit about that, the results you've been able to get so far.
Yeah. So I guess once we had the plan completed, which was June 2017, we then engaged another professional to help us buy the properties. So that was September 2017 we bought our first one. And that was in Queensland.
Yep.
In Mount Gravatt. That was purchased for the price that was put in the plan. And again, I didn't think you could buy a house for that price.
Well, you are from Sydney, right? So
that's correct. From Sydney, I think everything's 800 plus.
So straight off the bat, you went borderless. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, I guess that was the other thing. Going borderless was, I didn't think we'd ever go borderless. But once, I guess listening to the podcast, your podcast, and a few others, getting that mindset shift change that you don't need to buy in your own backyard. Buying the first one was extremely nerve-wracking, but also the process was made smooth with the help of our buyer's agent. And then once we did purchase that one, I wanted to buy the next one. The day after. I was like,
you got the bug. Now this is where you got to calm down, everyone.
Yes, correct. So because of our age, we needed to act, and the plan said we need to act fairly quickly in terms of acquiring the assets because we needed time for the properties to grow. And unfortunately, we're not old, but we're not young either. So time isn't exactly on our side. So we needed to act fairly quickly on the 3 that we bought. And we pretty much did that. The second one was in March 2018.
What's the passive goal that you're chasing, Dennis?
It's around 70K. So when obviously after reading the book, let's get 100. We wanted 100K because we really didn't know what number we could reach. And given where we're at, 70 is what we need.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that, Dennis, too, and there's a couple of key lessons in this discussion for our listeners. One is 3 properties, job is done. You don't have to work out, do I need to buy? No, the job is done for you to achieve your goals. Number 1, and number 2, we just say $2,000 a week because that's the line in the sand, but it could be $1,000 or $3,000 a week, doesn't matter. And equally, when people are in retirement and they don't have a mortgage payment to make anymore, and they don't have any kids that are dependents anymore, they actually find that the income that they need in the here and now is not what they need when they need to retire to actually keep the run rate up of their lifestyle design. So there's a couple of key lessons in your story that we'd certainly like to drive home to the community. So you bought your first one in September 17. You bought your second one in March of 18, chasing 70K per annum. What about the third one?
So the third one was November 2019. It would have been earlier, but I changed jobs and I had to wait 6 months because the bank, banks want you to be in a stable job. Mm-hmm. So that was November 2019 was the third and final one. Mm-hmm. Again, and that was, so the first 2 were in Queensland and the last one is in Adelaide. Mm-hmm. I've seen the first 2, so I've actually gone and had a look at them. I haven't seen the one in Adelaide, personally, with my own eyes, which is okay.
Good excuse for a little break and head up there with the family to have a week up there, or did you intentionally just go for the purpose of inspecting your assets up there?
The first one I intentionally went up there, and it was at a time when I purchased, the rules had just changed. You can't claim expenses when you travel. And things like that, or this landscape had changed. You can't claim depreciation. All those kind of things happened just as I bought, which was okay because none of that was really factored into the plan, so that was fine. The second one, a brother-in-law had recently moved up to the Gold Coast, so it was kind of a bit of a mix there.
Yep. Yeah, and then and any plan to get down to Adelaide next year or something like that post-COVID to check out the final asset?
Yeah, we'll keep nudging the wife, saying, when's the next holiday in Adelaide?
Yeah.
So we can go and see it.
Yeah, call into the Barossa and, the Coonawarra and some good reds over there.
There is a distinction here too, Dennis, that for the benefit of our listeners, even though you were buying it sight unseen, your trusted buyer's agent wasn't buying it sight unseen. So I just wanted to make that distinction, because we don't recommend people should buy sight unseen unless they have a suitably qualified proxy doing it on their behalf.
Yep.
That's 100% correct. And I think the word you mentioned there is trusted. So I had 100% trust. We have 100% trust in our buyer's agent, Krista. She's done a fantastic job for us.
So tell us about your income, Dennis. And I do know this from previous conversations. You spoke at our live event that we did in Sydney, but you're self-confessed not on massive incomes, right? You're on average incomes. So and you've kind of hinted that the fact that you're surprised that you could borrow the money and that you could buy these houses. How do you feel about being a sort of not a massive high income earner, but still being able to set up financial peace and what's a really good future for you and Glenda and Luca?
Yeah. So one of the things was that when we first were thinking about buying property, my wife was working part-time, and to this day she's still working part-time. I thought she's going to have to get a full-time job, and we can't do this on 1.5 wages, I guess. But the reality is you can, if it's planned correctly, you can. So I guess the message out there to people is you can do this. It doesn't. I think you guys have a video on how to buy investment property and not affect the family income. I think it's called something like that, a video that you put out, and that holds true with us. So even though we're holding 3 properties, we have enormous debt, it really hasn't affected our day-to-day living at all.
And so, but part of that strategy is obviously with modest incomes is we've gone for slightly higher yielding properties. How has the tenancy story been? Because that's the other, people say, but what if tenants don't pay? Or, how did you go through COVID, and what has been the occupancy rates that you've been able to get on your properties?
One of the big things that I'm glad we focused on your, what do you call it? The fundamentals was the defense.
Yeah.
And we've had to call on that a number of times. And that is what has put us in good stead. So when we bought the 3 properties, they all are tenanted immediately. But for example, the very first one that we bought in September 2017, it tenanted in November, I guess. But come January, the tenant had stopped paying rent. And there's a whole new podcast on that one. The tenant basically left with all their possessions in the house. So, that's where we had to call on the defense of, landlord insurance, our buffers, all that in place. The same during COVID, when my income dropped, I was worried, and I did call my mortgage broker and my property advisor to say, hey, what happens if the tenants stop paying rent? What if I lose my job altogether? What do we do? And their sound counsel to me was, okay, look at your buffers. You have enough to last you more than, we had enough to last over a year, I think it was. You're going to be okay. You've got your defense set up.
And how did that make you feel? There's still probably a little bit of butterflies in the belly, but did that give you some more confidence just to sort of say, okay, well, what I'm in control of is, making sure that I can try and secure my work, or coming back also to the experience you had with your first tenant, which is a sour one. Did that give you any, sort of poor taste in your mouth to go again?
So I guess going back when the first tenant, up and left, and it was quite stressful at the time, but there was no hesitation. We bought the next one in March.
No panic.
And It was January when the tenant up and left, and I was going through the whole kerfuffle but I guess that was where a mindset comes into it, but also that I've seen almost the worst in my very first property. So it's, I think the other thing to portray is that it's not all rosy once you buy some property. There are going to be bumps in the road, but as long as you're well prepared for those bumps in the road, which we were and we still are, you can ride them through. And also the mentality of it's a long game. You always say it's a get rich slow process, and we are definitely in it for the long game, not any short term fixes there.
You make a good point, because you can mitigate the risk, but you can't eliminate it, and that's important, because nobody predicted COVID coming along, and that's why some people are investors and some people aren't, because some people have an appetite for risk that they can manage and mitigate, and other people do not have an appetite for that risk at all, and that's the beauty of human nature, right? But there's so much in your story, Dennis. If I look at this, we have 3 properties done and dusted. You've got 3 investment properties that are all outside of your backyard. All 3 of them are borderless. You're focused in on the defence. You've got modest incomes. You've got a modest goal. You're planning. You're conditioned for not getting into debt. There's so much in your story that you've overcome. I think it's a terrific one. So given that you now are on the other side of, you're past the accumulation phase. You're now in debt retirement, moving forward to the full lifestyle design that it's intended to have. Talk us through that. What does it feel like to be able to have be on that side of the program?
It does feel good, having the accumulation phase done and dusted, and the fact that we can enjoy the fruits of our labor in 15 years' time, possibly. I think there's an analogy that you sit under the shade because someone planted a tree 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And that's kind of the stage that we're at. I also feel that, I guess one of the reasons I'm coming on this podcast is to try and, let's not
Inspire.
use, sorry, that's inspire, correct. Other people that you can do this. You don't need to have millions of dollars in the bank or be a high income earner. You can do this.
You are the poster person for that, in terms of I think your story is something that I think that a lot of people can actually draw inspiration from, because, as I said, there are a heap of moving parts there that you've overcome. So I think it's exciting. You now just get to, you talked about the fact that property is a long game. You're right. It's now sit back, wait for the compounding impact to kick in, and then towards the latter part of your portfolio, that you get to enjoy it. The last question for me is, do you have people that in your world that you talk to about investment properties, or is it still a foreign language to your network and your sphere of influence?
Yeah, at the moment, it's still a bit of a foreign network. It's not that I will happily talk to anyone that kind of, if the topic comes up, and I'm trying to share the knowledge that I've gone through, and also we've given a few people the book. We've had various copies of your book that we've lended out. We're trying to reach out to immediate family, but once they're ready, or if and when they're ready, they can come and talk to us, and we'll happily have that chat. But I think it's something that shouldn't be taboo. It shouldn't be hidden away.
Do your parents know how much debt you got?
Mum's like, oh, you bought another house. So you sure you can afford that? Yeah, we planned for it. We've planned for it.
Follow the debt number with the asset number. That's always helpful to put context around everything. Sure. My final question, can I start with some observations? So firstly, there's, again, in following up on what Bryce was saying about the takeaways, conscious around money. Very helpful. Very helpful in terms of you're never worried about it in the first instance. That's really good. Then you went on a journey of that. I've now got responsibility for Luca and the family, and so we want to set ourselves up so our retirement is ours to control. That we're not relying on a pension. As I said, you're salt of the earth Australians going about your day-to-day business. You also tell us that mindset's been a really positive aspect of going after this. So my final question to you, Dennis, is really just around, is there any other tips or any other advice that you want to share with the community about your journey to date? Because at the end of the day, you are the epitome of knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it. Well, you've acted on it. So any other takeaways for the community?
That's the big one. It's never too late. Never too late to start. We were in our 40s when we started, so never too late to start. Surround yourself with knowledgeable people in property investing, whether it's this podcast or other podcasts. Get yourself some knowledge. Read the books. read books on investment property. And then the biggest thing is once you have the knowledge, act on it 100%.
Beautiful.
Definitely put the knowledge into action.
Terrific stuff,
Fantastic.
Dennis. Well, it's been a pleasure getting to know both you and Glenda over the years. We certainly appreciate that you've put your hand up to share your story with the community, because you've done it before in a private. There's probably a couple of hundred people in the room that day, but being able to share it across our community, I say it every time. I will continue to say it every time. It's very brave for people to come up and be so transparent about their backstory, about what they've done, how it's transformed their life, some of the challenges that they've come across. So to you, we thank you for that on behalf of the community, and thanks for joining us on the couch today.
All right, thank you. And thanks to both of you for giving all your expert knowledge out to the community for free. And you've definitely transformed our lives.
Thanks, Dennis. You're a star.
You are. It's a
Cheers, mate.
pleasure.
Well
Thanks,
done.
mate.
Congratulations to you and Glenda.
All right, thank you.
Well, there you have it, Ben. 3 properties, all borderless investing. Not only that, started late, using his words, but no stress whatsoever in the relationship and around money. That's pretty good.
Oh, it's very good. It comes back to a conscious understanding, right? And a marriage made in heaven of 2 people who are diligent around money. So that's helpful. A really good attitude, but also a bit of work that's been done on mindset and building up that confidence, because early on it was a bit overwhelming. I think took a really important step in terms of acknowledge their weaknesses and decided to get some advice. I think that's going to be helpful for them. And now they're, even though first property had a little bit of challenge with it in terms of the tenant, seen, the best and the worst, and now hopefully just pay the debt down and build out that passive income and make some really conscious decisions about, how they're going to look after the family going forward. So good news story all around.
There you go, folks. Hopefully that served you as you work towards Christmas this year. Amazing couple. We've known Dennis and Glenda for some time. Glenda has the most amazing smile, Ben. She lights up a room like a Christmas tree. So as we are in the shadows of Christmas, that is appropriate. But we want to say thank you to Dennis for sharing his story, his and Glenda's story on the Property Couch, Ben. So I'm not going to see you before Christmas, so hopefully you enjoy the big day tomorrow, mate, and I look forward to catching up with you next week as we look to welcome in the new year.
The new year, and say goodbye to 2020. As we sign off on today's episode, I just want to say a Merry Christmas for tomorrow for everyone. And also to say, take Dennis's big takeaway, which is knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it, just like Dennis and Glenda have done.
Well said, Ben. Merry Christmas, folks. See you next week.
Hey there, folks. Ben here. I hope you're enjoying the summer series. I've got a couple of really important messages for you. First up, I want to let you know that we're giving away our best-selling book. That's right, our best-selling book, Make Money Simple Again. And it teaches you how to run the Money Smart system inside the My Wealth portal. Now, best of all, as part of the free book offer, you also get a free account on the My Wealth portal. Now, there's over 28,000 people who are using the portal to advance their money management skills and to make their money work harder for them. Now, where do you find this information? It's simple. You go to thepropertycouch.com.au/summer series. But wait, there's more. I also want to tell you about our TPC survey. So our Property Couch, we're doing a survey so we can bring 2021 the best shows that we've ever bought before. So that survey was going to ask you about what the show you want, how we're showing up, the positives, the negatives, what we can improve, what you want us to talk about next year. That's what we're about. Now, the best part about that is there's a $500 credit to be won as part of Select Residential Property. That's right, we're giving you the chance to win a $500 credit for filling out the survey. Now, the survey can also be found at thepropertycouch.com.au/summer series. Why not check it out? Now, before I go, I've got to remind you that the information provided, it is not financial advice. We recommend that you reach out to your licensed professional advisor so that you can look at your unique circumstances before making or acting on any information. And don't forget, final call, thepropertycouch.com.au/summer series, where you can get our free best-selling book, or you can also complete our survey for next year's shows.